안녕하세요, 여러분. I'm Sandhya,
And I'm Prabha, and this is Discovering Culture.
a video series where we explore the boom of Korean culture in India.
This episode, we set out to discover Korean food in India.
Unfortunately, we could not visit all of the Korean restaurants in India, but here are our top picks within Delhi. Let's go!
The history of Korean food in India can be traced back to Chennai in the mid 90s, and since then, its presence has been felt all over the country. In this video, we tried to include restaurants and cafes that offer varied experiences.
We sat down with Rani Lee from Seoul Restaurant, a fine dining eatery, to talk about her experience.
Recently, Korean culture has been really expanding and it's reaching like a lot of different nations, and it's really just a global phenomenon now. So, after that, do you think that the audience that comes to your restaurant now has changed? Like, do you see more younger people who want to try Korean cuisine for the first time show up to your restaurant now?
Yeah, there was a huge change in recent few years. I had so many Indian young guests to our Korean restaurant. That has been actually it's a phenomenon because they would like to speak about Korean cultures and like famous idols and actors, like all the dramas. They were already like very friendly about it, very familiar, and they were that made them too interested in Korean culture and expand to food and like many dessert and every interest. Like it was actually I think it's lucky that I'm Korean and people like would like to ask me questions about Korean culture. I was so happy to introduce and letting them know and like show like our culture and food and like many we have many dishes, and they were all interested and they were like looking at the menu, and it was quite interesting, and I definitely feel that Korean culture is getting really expanded. Recent 1 year we have renovated like fully. Have you been? I don't know if you have been to
Yes.
recently. Yeah, it was fully renovated like all Korean style, or like many brick designs and more like tables, and like we try to like make them feel like Korea, like Korean restaurants. So all the products are actually brought from Korea as well. I bought it, bowls and spoons and like chopsticks, like and plates. We actually got it all like I actually brought it from Korea and make it like all like more like Korea. I think it's really positive that like people accept more foreign cultures and they are interested in many other different cuisines, and I think it's really good for everyone because it's getting really globalized.
We also interviewed Arishi Garg, a student of the Institute of Hotel Management, Chennai. She's a Korean food enthusiast and the winner of Korean Culinary Challenge 2020.
India is a big country. We have like lots of different cultures, lots of different cuisines. But just from like a more culinary point of view, like just technique wise, flavor profile wise, do you find like any differences or similarities between Indian and Korean cuisine that could maybe potentially draw more consumers to Korean cuisine? Indian consumers also.
That is actually a very good question. Um, I would say, I mean, obviously, the first thing is the rice, which is the staple
Right.
food here. But then again, a lot of people in this country don't just eat rice, even
Yes.
though it is a staple here. Here wheat and all is also jowar, barley, and all that. Like all the other foods that are staples. But then in Korea, people don't eat a lot of that stuff. They have buckwheat. That is something that we eat here also, but then they make buckwheat noodles out of it, which is not seen here. So you could say that a lot of our ingredients are similar, but the way we use them is quite different.
Because you said you visited Korea, and I'm sure you've had like a lot of Korean food over there. If there was like maybe any one particular Korean dish or a drink that you could introduce to the Indian market, what will that be?
Mm, I don't know. I think kimbap would be something that people would enjoy because it's simple. It's not so different. I
Right.
think people would be more open to something like that because a lot of Indians like to eat sushi, right? And it's somewhat similar to it. I think that would be something that we could introduce. Then again, we should try to introduce something staple, like for example, like a samgyetang is something which is really nice, and I really liked it. And you know how they use ginseng in it, which is really full of nutrition. So that is something that maybe Indians could be drawn to. That okay, this has ginseng, it's good for your body. It's like a chicken soup. So something simple like that, maybe even a kimchi jjigae would be something that people could be introduced to. So I guess staples like these.
Yeah. Oh, here's a fun one. There's a
Mhm.
chef in Delhi who's been doing like really fun sort of fusion cuisine with like little aspects of Korean cuisine, like they do kimchi vada pav or something like that. What do you think
Oh,
of that? Yeah,
yeah, that's really cool. There are a lot of restaurants, right, who do fusion food. Like people are drawn to this. People
right.
want something which is out of the box, which is something crazy, which is different, something worthwhile going out, not just having whichever what you
Mm.
said, your kimchi vada, right?
Vada pav. Yes.
Okay, vada pav.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. So, it's so different from your regular vada pav. So people want something, some sort of kick. And this sort of culture is coming into India now.
Yeah.
Initially, not a lot of restaurants would be fine dine, and not a lot of restaurants would serve these fusion foods. But then these days, there are a lot of. I'll give you an example. There's this restaurant in Bombay. It's called Mask. It's a very famous restaurant. It's apparently very good, and they make kimchi out of moong dal. So I'm not sure. It could be some other dal, but I remember them making kimchi from moong dal. So, yeah.
But then, do you think that this is like a good avenue into Korean culture, like into Korean cuisine, or if it's like, kind of a gimmick? Not in a bad way, but like if it just remains as a gimmick as opposed to, hey, let's explore more about Korean food.
That is true. Sometimes even I wonder, if this really actually would this taste good? Yeah, so a lot of we can only see it through, pictures, and we don't know if this is something that it would taste good. But the fusion aspect of it, it's definitely not a fad. It's something that is going to stay.
Apart from the traditional Korean restaurants, there have been many experimental eateries that have also set up shop in India. The Forest is one of many Korean bakery cum cafes that attracts people from all age groups in New Delhi.
Another such cafe is Got Tea that specializes in Korean bubble tea.
So I want to go back to 2019, early 2019 in January. That's when I really wanted to like travel back to India after, I think it was after like 8 years after graduating. So I wanted to go back, spend some time with friends, also go back to my old school and get back that kind of memory and good like a kind of it just relaxes me because it feels like a second home to me. So I went there. During that time in Korea, the bubble teas were really, really popular. And my friend also studied in the States and he was missing his bubble tea in India. And we are like, why don't we start something fun like this? And it just came out of like, it came out of from nowhere.
Just walk us through your process of deciding the flavor profiles and the ingredients that you chose for to go into the bubble tea.
So we actually came out with the classic black because of the Indian market, and we thought like that would really hit huge because it's familiar with people. But what we have learned from this process is that the Indian audience actually likes to try out new flavors. That's why our other flavors like the taro and the green matcha has been doing really well.
One thing we did want to do is try to involve India also there. So if you see our classic black is from Assam, so we sourced the proper Assam tea from there to try to not just use any random off the shelf like English black tea, but wanted to kind of involve that and combine the flavors of cultures of India and Korea.
I think one of the bigger things that sort of works out for you in terms of marketing is just word of mouth. because I think what you've created is so not just like good in terms of the product that it is, but it's so visually pleasing to look at as well that you can't help but be like, hey, I'm having this bubble tea here, look at this picture, right? And then everyone else is like, oh, what is this? Like, where did you get it from? And that's how like it sort of grows. So, to what extent would you credit like the growth of your business to your visual and your packaging, and how involved were you in that as well?
Oh, I think that's one of our most important way for us to help grow this brand. Have the best of both worlds. It needs to look good, be Instagrammable, and at the same time taste great.
So that packaging, I think, helped us a lot, and we are really, really thankful to customers who are sharing the experience. And this word of mouth is what we want to do. We want this drink to be really enjoyable and share worthy.
Right.
So we are not really putting in a lot of marketing budget to this, but instead we're focusing on like more of customers experience with our store or with our delivery and with our drinks.
A huge thank you to all the restaurants and cafes for being a part of this.
Thank you for joining us today. See you again next time.
오늘은 여기까지.